Welcome to the Manifest Your Greatness podcast. Practical and actionable steps that you can take to help manifest the greatness that you already possess deep inside. Welcome to the Manifest Your Greatness podcast's first masterclass. Now that we've published well over 100 episodes, and many of them have been discussions with amazing individuals who have shared so much insight and wisdom in episodes past, I realized that, hey, we have some great material to share within a much more focused context. And what's great about these masterclasses is that you'll be hearing from several of our phenomenal guests in a single podcast episode speaking to very similar topics. And of course, this offers you not only a great opportunity to take a deeper dive into these topics, but also incorporate different perspectives, different journeys, and different insights on those same topics. Our first Manifest Your Greatness podcast masterclass is on the topic of mindfulness and human connection, where we embark on a journey of self-discovery and interpersonal understanding. In a world that often moves at a relentless pace, it's easy to feel disconnected from ourselves and those around us. However, by cultivating mindfulness and embracing the power of human connection, we can unlock a profound sense of peace, fulfillment, and belonging. Mindfulness at its core is about being present in the moment, fully aware of our thoughts, feelings, and sensations without judgment. It's a practice that allows us to observe our experiences with clarity and compassion, enabling us to respond to life's challenges with resilience and grace. Throughout this masterclass, we will delve into various mindfulness techniques and exercises designed to deepen our awareness and foster a sense of inner calm. But mindfulness doesn't exist in a vacuum. It thrives in connection with others. Human connection is the lifeblood of our existence, shaping our relationships, our communities, and our sense of identity. Yet, in an age dominated by digital distractions and superficial interactions, genuine connection can often feel elusive. In this masterclass, we will also explore the art of meaningful connection, learning how to cultivate empathy, compassion, and authenticity in our interactions with others. The goal of this masterclass is to offer some practical modalities by which to cultivate a greater sense of presence, deepen your connections with others, and navigate the complexities of human relationships with mindfulness and grace. Whether you're seeking to enhance your personal relationships, improve your communication skills, or simply find more joy and fulfillment in your daily life, this masterclass offers invaluable insights and tools to help you on your journey. So join me as we embark on this transformative exploration of mindfulness and human connection. Together, we will discover the profound beauty and resilience of the human spirit, one mindful moment and meaningful connection at a time. And I can think of no one better to kick off this journey today than Bill Murphy. For those of you who have listened to Manifest Your Greatness podcast episode number 53, you know that Bill's a close friend who just several years ago was staring at a mere 10% chance of surviving fourth stage colon cancer. Bill's phenomenal story of resilience and his relentless human spirit spans over 28 years of exploring and practicing meditation and mindfulness while incorporating the study of Aikido and Jiu-Jitsu. In this expert from our interview, Bill humbly offers invaluable life insights with an entertaining delivery style that is uniquely his own.
I was living in Boston. I think 22 years old, living in Boston. And from a young age, I wasn't completely off the rails, but I was definitely kind of into drinking and maybe smoking a little bit too much marijuana. Nothing too much stronger than that, but I was definitely kind of wasting my potential for many years. And around 22, I had done Taekwondo for a year or two in like high school. And after that, I had tried another kind of karate martial art, and I was getting sober. I had made the decision I couldn't kind of be living the way I was living. I was living pretty rough. So somehow I found Aikido, but I had found it as the art of peace. I had found it as a philosophy that I believed was really closely together with meditation and Zen and in spirituality. And the dojo that I found, it was in Salem, Massachusetts, on the North Shore, the lovely town of Salem that we all know from the witch trials. It was really awesome. I feel like it might have even been in an old church. It was a judo dojo, an aikido dojo, and then Shotokan karate. But the aikido, the main instructor, was an older white guy, probably in his 70s, and he always had a stubby cigar hanging out of his mouth. And classical music was always blasting. And I remember I had to wait. They didn't let you just kind of dive into class with everyone. They wanted to have like a beginner class that started like once a month. So I started doing judo for a while waiting for that. And then the floodgates opened. It was the healthiest I'd probably ever been. I was like meditating daily. Within a year, I'd kind of fallen away, but it planted a seed until my lovely ex-wife, she was born in Cedar City, Utah. 3 months into meeting her, we were pregnant with our first son. And then we had another son, and he was 9 months old. And we said, we want to go to Portland, Oregon. That's where I wanted to go. I was a skateboarder forever. That was kind of a mecca of skateboarding. And we figured it was, what a beautiful Oregon, liberal. And we had enough money to get to Salt Lake City. She had a grandmother that had a small apartment for us to rent. And we spent like a complete tax return. We had no money to get this far, to stay here for a year, to move to Oregon. And that was, man, 24 years ago, 23 and a half years ago. I'm still here. About 5 years ago, I met my now fiance, Amanda. Yeah. She came in my life like 8 months before the biggest fight of my life, before cancer. We had just moved in together, and I ended up in the emergency room one night, and our lives were changed. I have such a hard time remembering so much, but 2 or 3 years of some real crazy stuff, and with her at my her type of personality and the way she was, like, she did so much for me through cancer. I don't know if I would have made it without her, you know? Before my cancer, I remember I had one of my hips replaced, and my father from Boston came out, and he had been out before. But I always remember that he said, like, Salt Lake City is a special place that not a lot of people know about. You know what I mean? But that's changed.
You know, you'd mentioned about Aikido and philosophy and the art of peace. And we've talked about this before. I think that was also something I could really relate to. It was almost as if, for me personally, like an acceptable way to learn how to defend myself. Like I had to get my head around it. It was almost like, well, I want to be able to protect myself. I want my kids to be able to protect myself. But there's something inside that at the same time, I really want to learn more about how to keep myself calm, how to keep myself centered, and how to keep balance in my life. And I just remember so many times those three things came up, you know, staying calm or aware, centered, balanced. So I found a lot of growth lessons, I think, through Aikido. And one of the conversations I'll never forget that we had, we were talking about learning to practice the art of peace in our daily lives, and how we have an intention to be caring and compassionate, and to, you know, do the right thing, be courteous and be considerate. But every now and then something will happen and you blow up, you know, like someone cuts you off. I think we were talking about that. Breathing, thinking, peaceful thoughts, and then someone like almost runs you off the road. You're like, what the hell are you doing? You know,
1000%. I just had something just today, my friend. Because, you know, I was a truck driver for 20 years. So I try to be gentle with my road rage. It's just, that was my office for so long. Today, I had a little time before therapy, before doing this, and I was like, I'll go to this bookstore. I like to read. I'm into Buddhism. I'm into meditation. I've been around this stuff for 27 years, and I'm failing horribly at it. I'm currently trying to reconnect again for the 90th time in the last 27th year. But I'm like, oh, I'm going to go get a mindfulness book. But on the way in, some guy did something, and I was like, literally, like, almost trying to start a fight with this guy. In my head, I'm like, what are you doing, you idiot? But yes, man, it's this stuff, everything that happens in a dojo or a gym or whatever, like, in my belief, is supposed to be kind of making you a little bit more control in your emotions. But man, yes, to be human is to be, you just never know. At least I'm trying, dude.
That's right. And I actually talked a little bit about this in one of my other podcasts, Aikido as a life philosophy. And one of the things that I mentioned in there is that a lot of times people will talk about being calm, being balanced, but you're never really there. It's like I compared it to When you're watching a gymnast or some acrobat and they're doing these things and on one toe or one arm or whatever, and you're just like, how do they do that? And they look balanced, but if you look really carefully, you can see they're always moving. They're always trying to find balance. They're always working at trying to keep balance, and you'll never have it. You just try to get as close as you can to it. You're always going to be trying to kind of stay there, and stay as close as you can. So it's always a moving target. So I tell myself that too, but I hear
Yes.
you,
It's
yeah.
I'm going through a lot even currently, and I always said, life is difficult for most of us, but I try to remind myself to be gentle with myself, because it's just so difficult to keep everything going out here, and just stay calm,
Right.
joyful,
Right.
and not to be annoyed, and you know what I mean. But it's again, I think it's a good thing for us and for other people that are actually trying to do this stuff, or noticing that this stuff is going on.
What I thought was really a mind bender for me was that here I came to Aikido thinking I'm going to learn on the mat all of these lessons and it's going to help keep me calm, or because I'm going to learn these new ways of handling situations. And it was actually the hardest place for me to practice what I was learning. However, what I took away from it was more on the philosophy and the books that you had recommended, and helped to keep me trying to work on developing and finding that balance. And I realized that's probably the bigger picture for me. I think I was looking for an example of that with Aikido, but it led me in a direction, I think, where I was able to find a lot more of the spirit of that.
Yeah, and there's so much more of this going on, whether it's mindfulness or meditation, or
Yeah.
it's that those communities have grown. Just even here in Salt Lake, where there was maybe one before that was really obscure, now there's like maybe 5 or 6 that are kind of obscure. In general, I feel like the world is really trying to everyone's trying to be better people. I guess we can feel optimistic about these communities growing, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Helping people find that gateway to at least becoming more open to these other ways of getting to know yourself and understanding your own emotions, and trying to continue to work towards balance and being more aware, being more peaceful. In our next segment in today's masterclass on mindfulness and human connection, we sit down with Nicole Starbuck. For those of you who have listened to or watched Manifest Your Greatness podcast episode number 83, you may recall that Nicole is a psychic empath, quantum energy healer, spiritual mentor, and a life coach. She is founder of the Oracle Academy, spelled AURACLE, as well as the lead teacher at the Psychic School. Nicole is passionate about empowering people to find and pursue their life purpose, and she calls upon modalities such as Akashic Records, hypnosis, light language, meditation, past life regression, Reiki, and more to assist people in reconnecting to their higher selves in order to begin healing their fears and anxieties. Nicole truly believes that when those aspects of ourselves are healed, we can attract abundance and manifest what we truly desire at light speed. Perhaps the most important and most powerful skill that Nicole possesses is the power to literally light up a room with her highly contagious positive energy. You can hear the sincerity and the unfiltered enthusiasm for the beauty of honest and vulnerable human connection in her voice. She's a wonderful friend, a lifelong student of her craft who is full of knowledge and offers insight into self-awareness and self-transformation, radiating with joy for the topic while embracing an unconditional love for everyone's human potential.
I ended up having a lot of anxiety because I would have these premonitions, these dreams and predictions, and they would come true. I felt like I couldn't control what was happening to me or the outcomes that I was seeing. And because I was not living in alignment with my authentic truth and developing my skills and abilities, I ended up also having a lot of depression alongside the anxiety. This all led to chronic illness that had a lot of disease or dis-ease in my body. And this all came to a head in my early 20s. I thought I was doing everything right. Go to school, get good grades, get a good job with benefits, everything will be fine, right?
The
And
formula, right?
the formula for success. It was not fine. It was not fine. That was my lowest point. I lost so much weight. I was so sick. I was falling apart. I ended up in the ER with a panic attack. And the doctors were really pushing for psychiatric medication and psychiatric care. And I just thought, there has to be another way. I just felt it in my bones that there has to be another way. So I started my personal growth and development journey, which served me for many years, got my mind right, got my body right. I was doing much better. But along the line, I thought, I'm still missing something. I'm missing the soul. I'm missing the spiritual component. So I had a second spiritual awakening where I was just really drawn to anything with the word soul in it. I created a whole business called Soul Loving around soul. This was the early rendition of the business I have now. And I went to a Facebook group that was called Visionary Soul. They were hosting a retreat called Soul on Fire. And I just kept having this feeling, this is the next step. This is the next step. This is the next step. So I go to this retreat in Sedona. I don't know if you've been or anyone has been. Beautiful place, highly recommended to anyone, everyone. It's just magical there. And I go to this retreat, and one of the facilitators turns to me and she says, "You're psychic." And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like, you are not supposed to know that. That is my deep, dark secret. Like, I don't tell anybody this. How did you know? And she helped me with some light language and some other things, open up and reactivating my gifts and abilities, because it was under lock and key. I had shut that down. It was under wraps for many, many years. By this point, 20 years. And she helped me unlock and unleash that. And I went all in. I got it. I read as many books as I could about the subject, took as many courses and programs, certifications. I started doing professional readings on Etsy. At one point, actually impacted over 1,000 people, replaced my day job income doing professional readings. And what I noticed was a lot of people that were coming to me were also highly sensitive, highly empathic, just hadn't realized it yet. They were getting all that anxiety like I had gotten, and they were looking for confirmation. The people that were coming to me for healing sessions, also highly empathic, just hadn't learned how to channel out that energy that they were receiving, everyone else's energy, out of their bodies, because then they were ending up sick and coming for healing sessions. And I thought, there must be a common thread here. I want to address the root causes, not just the symptoms, right? We don't want to just put a Band-Aid fix and send you off with a one-off reading. Like, we actually want to empower you to embrace your spiritual skills and abilities, which was the inspiration and catalyst for Oracle Academy, which houses the psychic school for developing your psychic intuition.
Wow. So during this process, it sounds like the trip to Sedona, you had an intuition that there was something that you needed to discover that was happening inside of you, but you still had that feeling that I don't want to let out too much. But when did that kind of tipping point happen where you said you went all in? Was there a specific event or anything that happened that all of a sudden made you comfortable with kind of coming out and saying, I can help you. There are things that I can do to assist you. I have these abilities and I want to be of service. Did something happen to flip that switch, or how did that come about?
That's a beautiful question. So prior to the second spiritual awakening, which was the trip to Sedona, where I got reactivated in my psychic gifts and abilities, I was in a really dark place. I was doing really good for a while, and then I had like a relapse, and I was in a dark place, and I was in so much physical and emotional pain, because they're linked, right? So I'm emotionally in pain, that leads to physical pain, which leads to more emotional pain. I didn't even want to get out of bed in the morning. Yeah. It took everything I could, because it felt like I had been hit by a truck. Everything hurt, and I didn't want to live anymore, to be completely honest. I just wanted the pain to stop. And I remembered very distinctly, like, it was all I could do to get out of bed and get in the shower. And one day I'm in the shower and I'm like, God, I just want this to end. I just want this to end. And this voice came in and spoke to me, and it said, don't give up. You're destined for greatness. There's purpose in the pain. Keep going. And I got this vision, like, it's bringing me to tears not thinking of it, but I got this vision of me taking everything I had experienced, all this pain and this struggle and this suffering and all of this anxiety and depression and chronic illness, and taking it and transmuting it and using it to transform lives. I just didn't know how. And I didn't realize how until I took that leap of faith, what you said, following your intuition, before I realized it was intuition. Yeah. And then I realized this is it. This is it. Anxiety is actually your intuition coming through. It's just that we have so many other influences and interferences that we second guess, and it leads to overthinking and overwhelm. Yeah. And so if I can help people clear the clutter and get back in tune with their internal system, their inner guidance and inner wisdom, everything else falls into place. The more in alignment we are with our soul's mission and life purpose, the less anxiety we're going to feel, the less depression we're going to feel, the less chronic illness we're going to have, the less burnout we're going to experience. And the more we're able to step up, show up, speak our authentic truth, and be a guiding light for other people.
Yeah. Some of the things that you said really made me think about some of my own experiences as well, and especially when you're talking about anxiety. But the thing that comes up for me sometimes is that when I feel anxiety and I can't put a finger on where it's coming from, I just kind of feel like something is off, something is kind of triggering my emotional responses, and I can't put a finger on it. It's like I'm trying to listen to a station on the radio, but it's not in tune. I know there's something there, so I need to kind of slow myself down and really start to try to tune in better, or else it's going to just keep sounding like static and it's going to drive me crazy for the rest of the day. That's something that I've been really trying to work towards dealing with.
Yeah. And so I love how you described it like radio static, or just like a signal that's coming into your field and impacting your energy and your emotions, because that's really how when we get into the energetics of it, like if I were to ask you to close your eyes and think about a situation that's bringing you stress or anxiety, if you could give it like a color or a texture, what does it look like? Where does it feel like? Where is it coming into your body? So you described it as a sort of static. And so I tend to have a lot of clairvoyance, which is clear seeing. When you say static, and I can feel it in your field, it looks like grainy sand, like a sand cloud around you, right? And so when we get into the energetics of that and showing people how to clear and lift this energy for themselves, I have them tune into their body. We always want to go back in, go within to the body, right? We have tools like pendulum and tarot cards, so they're great, but also like trust your inner wisdom, right? So get back into your body. And so if we were to use you as the example and inviting you to tune into this kind of grainy sand static around you, you have the power, you have awareness, you know that it's there. And then what would it look like for you to actually like lift the cloud and push the cloud and push the sand away from you, or take a lawn leaf blower and like blow the sand away, right? Because awareness is the first step. You're halfway there. Awareness is the first step. Aligned action is the second step. So what are you going to do about it? And it's okay to feel anxiety. It's okay to have anxious thoughts. It's just, are we letting that anxiety, those anxious thoughts control us, or are we in control of our thoughts? And if anyone has been in my world for a while or has been listening to the different podcast interviews that I do, we tend to talk about the same three things. You are psychic, you have power, and you have control.
You also mentioned that everyone has their own unique psychic blueprint. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we start with your story, what sort of reservations or resistance you have around the word psychic, because I use that word intentionally because I know it can rub people the wrong way. And my purpose in that is to bring that awareness to, well, why does that bother you? Right. And I have people that say, oh, I wish I was psychic. Actually, you are. Let me help you develop that. But the psychic blueprint really comes about with, how do you best hear from God, source, spirit, universe, the divine, whatever you call that higher power? How are you tuning in? Because I can liken psychic abilities to being a radio or a TV where you can like tune into a station. But think about how many different types of TVs we have and different types of radios. Everyone's a little bit different, right? We have different buttons and levers and knobs and all these things. And so we look at two main things. We look at your energetic blueprint. How are you receiving information in your body? And then how is that coming about? How are the messages coming about? We look at the clairs. So earlier I mentioned clairvoyance, which is clear seeing, and I'll explain the other ones in just a moment. I usually start with our energetic blueprint. And I touched on this just a moment ago when I was talking about the sand, grainy sand around you, the cloud, the dust storm around you. So the energetic blueprint is, or the energetic signature, where do you feel truth in your body? Okay. Because one of the biggest questions I get is, how do you know if it's anxiety or intuition? Anxiety or intuition, right? So I'll ask a simple question. Very simple, straightforward, closing our eyes, tuning into our body, breathing out any anxiety, breathing in any peace, right? If I were to ask you the question or say, the sky is blue, what is the immediate visceral response that comes through? For me, I feel truth in my gut. And the solar plexus, which is right here in the stomach area, it's kind of a clenching here in the gut, like, yes, the sky is blue. But then if I were to say the sky is green, immediately my head wants to shake side to side. No, 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 the sky is not green. Yeah. And that's my example, but everyone's a little bit different, right? So some people will actually like go back and forth for no, or yes, front and back for yes, or they may feel their heart swelling for yes. Mm-hmm. Or some other sensation for no. There's no right or wrong. There's only which two for you. But I show this as an example. One, you can feel truth in your body. And two, everyone feels that a little bit differently. And then we repeat the exercise to find a pattern and make sure this is your yes and this is your no. So if I were to say the grass is green, immediately my gut kind of clenches and says, yes, 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 the grass is green. And then if I were to say the grass is purple, immediately I want to shake my head. No, 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 the grass is not purple. What are you talking about, right? And so that's how we feel truth in our body. Now, to differentiate between intuition and anxiety, because we hear voices, right? So I tell people we have our parents, we have our spouses and partners, we have our kids, we have our friends, we have our news, TV and movies, we have social media, we have the school system and religious constructs and structures and politics and all these other voices coming in. So one of the big steps is we want to take all of those external influences and unplug them as much as we can so that you can be a clear channel for receiving messages. So if we have taken out those other sources and we are still getting interference of, oh my gosh, is this anxiety of or intuition, tune back into that energetic signature. Is this information coming from within? Do you feel that in your gut for your yes? That's my example. Or like, is it coming from outside of your head? Right. Because for me, anxiety feels like little shards of glass coming in like daggers into my head. And it's a kind of like buzzing sensation like that. And you described it as static. And I saw it as kind of a dust storm around you, right? So then you can tune in, bring your awarenesses. Well, am I feeling this sensation as truth in my body, or am I feeling it as something outside of myself trying to come in and interfere? And then we get into part of that psychic blueprint is, what are your primary clairs? So most people are familiar with clairvoyance, which is clear seeing. That's being able to visualize in your mind's eye or third eye here what something is happening, the past, something that's going to happen. But also we have claircognizance, which is clear knowing. So that's just knowing information about people, places, and things without any other input or information, just having a sense of this happened then, this person's about to do that, this person has this history, these are the events that led up to this situation without anyone telling you anything else. But then we also have what's very, very common, and most people don't realize this. I touched on this earlier with the highly empathic people that were coming for healing sessions, is clairsentience, which is clear feeling. So if you have ever walked into a room and just gotten like a bad vibe about that space or a bad vibe about somebody, or you go like into a hospital or someone who's sick and you immediately know what's wrong with them because you feel it in your body, an ache in your tummy, a pain in your back, you're picking up on their. So this is clairsentience, but most people don't realize that. They don't know how to filter it, and then they end up picking up that illness because they're absorbing it like a sponge. It's the equivalent of if you walk into a bar and it's smoky, you walk out of the bar, you're still smoky. And so those are the three most common clairs, but we also have the other ones related to the senses. So we have clear olfactance, which is clear smelling. So you may actually smell smells that aren't there. I tend to smell things that are pretty raunchy and nasty, but I met someone the other day that smells like perfume and roses. I'm like, universe, give me some of that, please. Clairgustance, which is clear tasting. Clairaudience, which is clear hearing. That's another one. Wow. Is hearing things. But the hearing things is like, well, how do I know if that's me or not, like God, source, universe, right? again, going back into that energetic signature. So when I get a message, a divine download from source, spirit, whatever you want to call that, higher power, it tends to pop up in my head like a text message. Like, ding, this is happening, ding, this is a message for that person, ding, it just kind of pops up. Or I will see it like a photo, as if someone's texting me a photo, pops up right here, or texting me a video, I see it right here in my third eye. But that could be different for you. So some people will actually hear like a voice outside of them. And then if it's not your voice, then you know that. Yeah. And the other thing too is that people get voices that don't have their best interests in heart. And again, the question is, how do you know if that's anxiety or intuition? How do you know if this is God, source, universe, or something else? And the answer to that is God, source, universe, whatever you call that, higher power, will never tell you anything that is not for your greatest good and highest potential. So if there is any sort of doubt, fear, anxiety message coming through, that is either your internal shadow side, ego self wanting to keep you small, stuck, or one of those other influences is popping back in that I talked about: your parents, how you grew up, your spouse and what they think, your friends and what they think, the news and media, social media, religious constructs. It's interference.
Our next excerpt is from the eye-opening discussion I had with Dr. Fred Moss. I had the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Fred on Manifest Your Greatness podcast, episode 95. And in our talk, we took a no-holds-barred approach to discussing the good, the bad, and the confusing when it comes to human connection. Dr. Fred is a renowned mental health advocate, keynote speaker, and psychiatrist with a passion for helping people find and set free their authentic selves. He's the founder of the Welcome to Humanity movement, as well as the creator of True Voice Mastermind. He's also the author of Creative 8, Healing Through Creativity and Self-Expression, and Find Your True Voice. Dr. Fred has also written numerous articles for Psychology Today, and the recurring theme in Dr. Fred's work centers on leveraging the power of communication to heal and connect people. Dr. Fred's most recent work includes the True Voice course, which helps people rediscover their voice and share their message with the world, and Healing the Healer, a virtual course and mastermind designed to support transitioning healers. Dr. Fred is a lightning rod in the field of self-healing, and he is one of the very few psychiatrists that focuses on undoctoring patients by helping them discover the power they have to regain control of their life narrative.
You know, we have a true self, and each of us, we have something that is important to us. We have a core value system. We have a genuine, authentic process of dealing with the world around us. And most of us have really muffled or stifled or muzzled ourselves in the process of growing into an adult. We've learned how to actually become someone that we're not in order to protect the person that we are. Now, when you stop and look at that, there's something so insane about that. There's something so absurd, preposterous, and ludicrous about pretending to be someone you're not in order to protect the person that you are. Now, we have done that, and we learned how to do that when we were very young in school. We learned how to do it socially. We learned how to do it, like you said, in order to be liked, in order to belong, in order to make sure that we weren't being too disruptive, in order to stay on the island, essentially. And we learned how to do that in such a way that there was like a crack in the cement that got created. And the crack in the cement has gotten larger and larger over time. And most of us as adults have never really gone back to repair that crack. So we continue to say, be, and do things that are not consistent with our core self. The first thing to get about that is be kind to yourself for having developed yourself in that way. Most of us know where we are not aligned with what we are saying or doing, but we do it anyways. We know when that happens. How do we know? Because we had to actually design that way of being. We actually had to design it, hang on to it, reapply it, make sure we know who we told what to so that we could stay consistent with them. We had to give up on our own sense of truth so that we could make up whatever manifest and change we made up about the way that we look at things, and then keep it consistent so that somehow we look like we're aligned with ourselves. That's a lot of work. There is a whole lot of efforting that went into doing that. And we can be kind to ourselves because all of us have done it. We can be kind, we can be gracious, we can be accepting, we can be forgiving, we can be compassionate with ourselves and allow ourselves to walk into the humanity that includes that particular characteristic. When we do that, we then can see that even if we're not 100% our real self, we can take incremental steps towards being our real self by saying one more thing that's consistent with who you are to your friends or your family or your colleagues. You know, like taking incremental steps towards speaking your true voice. Because when you speak your true voice, it is addicting. People love it. People get totally inspired by it. And you open up the gates for the people that you're with to actually speak their true voice as well, which is a gift to everybody in the room. Ultimately, when you are aligned with yourself, then you open up the alignment of another person in that presence. And the tuning fork that you are, the resonating harmony that you are, begins to resonate harmonically with other people in the room. And that's where human connection actually gets made. When that human connection actually gets made, right at the heart of that is healing. That's where healing happens. Have you ever noticed when someone's totally aligned with you, the freshness that comes out of that experience? Like just an explosion of, wow, I love being human, or I love being with this person, or I love being me because somebody gets me. Somebody has heard me. Somebody has seen me. Somebody has valued me. And the way that they have done that is they have allowed their authentic self to resonate with my authentic self. And in that process, that is the birth of the whole healing connection that I speak of in my books, both in the Creative 8 and in the Find Your True Voice book. And we also take advantage of it, of course, inside of the True Voice course, where we teach people how to really find their true self. And then we use podcasting as a template. It's not a requirement, but we use podcasting as a template to help people become hosts or guests or even really avid listeners and understand what the whole value is of being fully self-expressed and then listening to others in their self-expression.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And like you were speaking about that tuning fork, right? The frequency and resonating with the other people in the room, and how when you have a true, authentic conversation, you feel that, and it's something that sticks with you, and being in the present moment for who you are and being there as yourself. When you have that experience, it's so different than getting through the day, right? When you're going through the day and you're speaking with people and you are making sure you come across in a certain way and that you're not making anyone uncomfortable, and you have this heightened awareness around how your message is getting out, and you're kind of filtering yourself throughout the day. And you're also trying to create a buffer so that when you hear something, your psychological guard is keeping you safe too. I'm trying not to take things too negatively and trying to make sure you don't misunderstand someone else. And there's this tension, this natural tension, and there's energy that's spent going through that whole process. But when you have those authentic conversations, when you're with someone and you're like, this is really what I want to talk about, you're hearing me, and you are actually sending back to me something that is helping me learn and helping me grow, helping me feel engaged, helping me feel like I belong, helping me feel safe. So they're two completely different experiences. And I love how you brought that up, because I think it's very easy to not seek that authentic experience because we've trained ourselves so well over the years, right?
Right, exactly. We have trained ourselves over the years. You couldn't have said that better. And the idea is that's because one of these conversation types that you're talking about is really built in just surviving and defending and, you know, making sure you look good, all of those things. And there's so much energy, and making sure you don't upset people, et cetera. There's so much energy spent in the process in that particular conversational style. And it really does interfere with being your truest self. When you're your truest self, those things take on much less importance. It's not my business what you think about me, for instance. It just isn't. It just isn't. Why? How could I make it my business? Now, on the one hand, if I see that you're having a hard time with me, or you don't like what I said, or what I said has upset you, it can be my business to adjust what I say next to deal with that, to at least be responsible for having created some degree of agitation over there or some degree of concern. But it's really not my business what you think of me or what anyone thinks of me. My business is to continue to express myself fully and totally along the lines of what's important to me, what's at my core values, what's the essence of me, the thread that has been here for every year and every day that I've been alive, that continues to be here and knows it's good and bad for me, knows what's right and wrong for me, knows what I want to say and what I think about things, and doesn't necessarily want to just gloss it over or say something different, or in many cases, actually say things that even I don't believe. And we all know what I'm talking about. I've done it. I've said things that I don't believe. What is that? It's like the ultimate in preposterousness.
Yeah. And to that point, one of the most difficult things I think for any professional to navigate is, and I went through this myself. My story is actually, it has a comical ending, but it was not funny at the time I was going through it. But basically being put in situations where you're good at what you do and you are learning material and you are, in my case, my job was to get funding for projects and to lead projects and things like that. So you had to proselytize people, right? You had to get them on board. You had to bring them in. You had to feel like this was something that was important to them and it mattered. And you end up doing these things and you have this inner tension going on over time on some of the projects. And I think everyone feels this. For some, the voice is louder than others. For me, it was growing and growing and growing. And as I was going through it, of course, it was confounding. It was frustrating. My emotional swings were all over the place because I felt like I was at odds with myself and I was taking it out on people and trying to placate myself with buying things I didn't need. All of this just to make that voice quiet down and make it think that things are okay. And meanwhile, I'm being told by my manager, you're doing a great job. Keep up what you're doing. Here's some more money so that you can keep doing what you're doing and keep getting better at doing what you're doing. And I'm thinking inside, to keep doing what I don't believe I should be doing. Exactly. And now I'm being rewarded for it. So we find ourselves in these situations so often. And the comical part for me, looking back on it now, I find it comical, is that eventually I was laid off, which for me was like, great, someone else took the decision out of my hands and said, we don't need you anymore. And I'm like, excellent. I don't have to put up with this anymore because I was doing something I didn't believe in, but I was afraid to say no. I thought it'd be irresponsible to turn the money down, to turn the position down, to have to go to my friends and say, I quit. And they'd be like, you quit that company? What's wrong with you? You're getting paid so well. So it's really a challenge to get to that point. I feel for everyone.
Yeah, it is for everyone. And again, we talked a little bit, I think it's Henry David Thoreau who said the mass of men go through life in quiet desperation and go to their graves with their songs still in them. Yeah. And, there's something about that. There's something about many of us have chosen or have been at least highly encouraged to not speak our truest self, to actually represent a company or represent an industry or represent an entity of some sort. Sometimes it's our family we're representing, and we do so without our whole and honest truth on the line. We do so knowing that what we're saying is not aligned with what we know to be true or what we know to be valuable. And that's where the source of dis-ease happens. That's where, when you're misaligned with your own self, there is that dichotomy is just a sham. You start living in duplicity. You start living in what you know to be true and what you pretending to act to be true. And those things are totally different. You can expect that there's going to be some busting going on inside of your physical, emotional, spiritual, or intellectual self to deal with the fact that you no longer are resonating even within your own self. And we all understand that. That's the other thing, is there's no human, including the monks in Tibet, We think about the monks in Tibet. Why do you think they go into caves? It's to deal with this.
Yeah.
It's to deal with this. That's why they go. Why do they want to quiet down the whole world? Why do they meditate 8, 10, 12 hours a day? It's so they can deal with this. This is the human condition. This is it. This is the embodiment of the human condition. This is the essence of the human condition. And the great news is that we have access to doing something about it. We can hover over ourselves. We can make incremental changes in how we be and how we act and in what we say and in how we carry on our life. We can make those changes, and we can do so by just really having respect for all that we've done up until now, and then what's really so for you right now. It does take some energy and some courage to speak what's so in front of a group of people that you're not sure is going to receive you favorably.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that there's a couple divisive topics out there in the world recently?
There's a few.
Yeah, there's a couple, right? Like nearly everything we talk about has a chance of upsetting someone else in the room.
Right.
And, which side are you on the war? Which side are you on Black Lives Matter? Which side are you on COVID? Which side are you on climate change? Which side are you on election? There are a ton of those out there. It's a major, major issue in the world. And we end up not speaking our truth for fear that we'll get in trouble. And what a shame, because ultimately, the greatest threat in the world isn't anything that I just named. It's not COVID. It's not climate change. It's not racism. It's not the war in Ukraine or the war in Israel. Those are all massive threats. And each one of them and many others could actually take down humanity like that. Like that could be the end of humanity. Inside of those monstrous topics is the possibility of just massive implosion and explosion. I'm not denying that. I am just saying that those are not the biggest threats in the world. The biggest threat in the world is what you and I are talking about today, and that is that we're no longer speaking our true voice collectively or individually. Why do I say that? Because it's going to take our true voice to deal with any of these other threats. Mm. It is the fire extinguisher that is required in order to take on any of those other topics that I named. People who are on different sides of the topic, different sides of the aisle on a particular topic, are going to have to communicate effectively in order to get to the other side of any solution in any of these areas. So it's going to take courage, and it's going to take complex listening. We're going to have to be able to listen to people who have things to say that are different than what we think about things. I've had people tell me, if you were them, you would do and think everything that they say and do. Yeah. You would. If you lived a life that they lived up until now, you would have the proper information to actually say and be exactly who they are. Can we be compassionate enough with the people who disagree with us, who are directly oppositional to what we have to say, and actually give them the time of day to listen to what it is that they have to say and take it in without fear of contagion? Many of us feel like if we listen to the stuff that the adversaries are saying, who are diametrically opposed to what we have to say about a particular issue, that maybe we'll catch the fever. Like if I have to listen to somebody who has that view on that topic, I'm not going to do that. I refuse to even listen to that person. There's a lot of trouble that emanates from that particular decision point. Once you have decided that you cannot even listen to a person, you have created a massive problem for yourself and the community. Now, I understand what it's like not to want to listen. It's funny, if my wife would be like, Fred knows how to not listen. It's true. I know how to not listen for sure. I know how to selectively mute myself. It's like, no, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to think that. I don't want to be exposed to that. I don't want to have to deal with somebody who disagrees, directly with me. However, the only way we're going to make things right in this world, and if you haven't looked, it's like 11:59 and 45 seconds on the planet right now. Yeah. If we're going to do anything in these next 15 seconds to keep this planet alive, one of the things that we're going to have to actually do is be able to listen to each other. If we can't do that, it's curtains, dude. So really, put a fork in it. It's over. We're done.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And I think social media obviously is not helping. The way now that you can manipulate and take things out of context is not helping. The way that you can find yourself in a silo of just people who are of the same opinion that you are and not even realize it, right? Because your Google search has a history of what you're looking for and says, hey, you might like this, you might like that. And you end up thinking this is normal, this is the way, I'm right and everybody else is wrong. Look at all the news. You don't even realize you're in this silo.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have this whole, like you were saying, the divide sometimes being so wide and so terrifying with the way that they speak about the other side in whatever the topic may be. It's like you become, if, like you said, you catch something or you become what you say you are. It's almost like you can't be in this conversation or have any of these thoughts and still claim to be like, there's, of course, you've heard like the un-American, you can't say this or have a conversation or consider these things. If you do, you're not American, you're anti-American or whatever. So it's a difficult space, but like you said, it's so important. And like you said too, about not only having that conversation, but having the ability to not turn off when these topics come up or to dismiss someone when they say something that is of, another ideology or whatnot, because you lose so much in that dismissing, right? You lose an opportunity to learn about yourself, about someone else, to find perhaps another piece of the puzzle that you were missing. And I think one of the things that scares so many people is they want it to be simple. They want it to be, this is right and this is wrong. And taking in complexity, taking in conversation that kind of goes against or brings in information that you have told yourself is not correct, it kind of stifles your ability to even hear. Like, it's amazing how I've heard so many times before that if you're of one belief or of one political party, it doesn't matter what someone says to you, you're not going to change. And it's like, well, if no matter what someone says to you, you're not going to change, you must not be listening at all, because every time I hear something and I'm truly listening, I learn something, and that actually contributes to my decisions. It contributes to the way that I think about the world or the way that I think about a particular organization or whatnot. So, I mean, it's scary that the complexity seems to be what scares people, and entertaining those types of conversations and a discussion, for a lot of people, they don't see it as healthy. They see it as, like you said, toxic, right? And that's such a difficult thing for me to get my head around.
Right. No, it really is. And, it's like, what will it take? I wrote an award-winning article called Global Madness, What It Takes for Us to Unite. And it's on my website, and it's also in my drfred360.com as well. And the idea is that, what kind of monstrosity would have to take place for all of us to drop our guns and to actually drop our differences and have to work together for a particular purpose? Like, could there be anything in the world that would actually create human connection at the heart of all healing? Like, to actually create a necessity for all of us to work along the same lines with each other? How would that look? Now, one way that would look, it's like when I wrote the article, which was still about 4 years ago, it was the idea that maybe a Martian invasion would be enough. If we knew that the Martians were coming in 30 days, and in order to keep this planet solid, we needed to find a way to work together in different countries, different races, different sexes, different ideologies. We needed to find a way to design a way to actually protect the planet from an outside influence. Even then, however, like right now, I'm not positive that a Martian invasion would be enough. There'd be all sorts of fractured systems looking at that as well, and all sorts of dissemination that would probably not allow for even an organized effort to work together for that purpose. So I'm not sure what level of event would have to take place, or what level of contextual reconfiguration would have to take place to have us all feel the necessity, the urgency, the requirement to speak our true voice effectively without being insulting, and more than anything else, actually open up our ears and our mind enough to listen to opposing viewpoints and at least pay enough respect to allow them to coexist with our so-called self-righteous view of being certain that we know what's true and what's not, when clearly, like you said, we've been funneled and siphoned into little holes to believe what we believe based on facts that have been served up to us that we just simply take as being the gold standard. And the key here, I think the gift that we all have is that it's not really risky to listen to somebody. Yeah. It's one of the things out there. You can't put your foot in the mouth when you're listening. You can't get in trouble listening. It's so safe. It's maybe the safest thing to do out there in the whole world, especially when you start looking at return on investment. Like, for the amount of time and energy it takes to just stop, just chill and listen to what's happening out there. The payoff is so ridiculously large when you're capable of doing that. Like, there's no cost and unbelievable levels of benefit that become available.
Our final clip in today's Masterclass on Mindfulness and Human Connection is Cassandra Ciarallo. I had the opportunity to interview Cassandra on Manifest Your Greatness podcast, episode number 87. And besides being such an unguarded and relatable human being, she's also an enchantment coach and embodiment facilitator with a mission to help women forge a bond with their authentic selves. Her approach? She empowers them to feel instinctively present and embodied while strongly rooted in their unique authenticity. Cassandra's dedicated work focuses on reconnecting women with the deep truths and suppressed power held within their own bodies. She does this by helping women rekindle their passions and rewire their energy and thoughts, and she specializes in leading with the wisdom of the body from her somatic studies in the art of presence and soul-based healing with Tao Healing Hands. With almost a decade of experience as an entrepreneur, Cassandra utilizes her acquired knowledge and robust change management skills to guide others to step into the life they envision. And as an enchantment coach and embodiment facilitator, she provides an empowering space for transformative personal growth. I just wanted to take a step back and just talk a little bit about how you decided to become an enchantment coach and embodiment facilitator. And of course, what is that as well? We'd love to learn a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I feel like the enchantment came and continues to come in my life, which is why I use that term to differentiate myself in the world of coaching. And to me, it's sort of this continuous development of self, continuous reconnection to me, my desires, my body, and really stepping into the path that lights me up. And I was actually almost going to say scares me because I feel like the path that lights us up is one that is next to and lies really close to fear. Yeah. And so my journey has been continuously like pushing that boundary of the things that I want to call in and really stepping into that and building belief in myself in order to do so. And that's really what I help women do, because I see a lot of women in the space of shoulding themselves, right? Playing really small because they're listening to the world outside of them. They're listening to society's beliefs, their parents' beliefs, their friends' beliefs, and it's not really what they truly want. And I think that that's where I was in a lot of ways too. So I've been an entrepreneur for almost 10 years. I was running another business in the world of sustainability and fashion. And I was like so excited and so motivated to be building this fashion company that was rooted in sustainability, was rooted with these values of people and planet over profit. But I feel like the journey of entrepreneurship, is so up and down. And in the beginning, I didn't really know what I was doing. I sort of just threw myself into it because I happened to meet these amazing artisans in Bali through my travels and making these goods from recycled tires. And I just had this moment of inspiration to collaborate and be part of this movement for recycled fashion, recycled accessories. And yeah, so I really jumped into it, not really knowing. I had studied business. I definitely was looking and seeking for something entrepreneurial to start. So it kind of matched my energy and my desires. But yeah, there were just such high highs and such low lows, because I think I was constantly looking outside of myself for all the answers and for this validation, right? If I was doing well financially, I felt really good about myself. And when I wasn't, I would feel really bad about myself, and I would be stuck in what I call gloomy FM. So I talk about and teach that there's these different frequencies, like radio stations we can be tuned to, right? And gloomy FM is one of them, and reality FM, and then there's enchanted FM. But gloomy FM is kind of this woe is me, what am I doing here? Why is this happening? And sort of like victimizing myself, but also just feeling really low about when things weren't going well, that it was me. And I had a really hard time picking myself back up from the times that were low. And I feel like they really got to me. Mm-hmm. Right. And so building that like core foundation of my self-belief wasn't super strong at the time. And because of that, that led me to burning out. I would say the first couple of times it was just really my body telling me like, okay, enough is enough. You need to slow down. And it was like genuinely like to this place of depletion where I just couldn't continue. And then the third time it happened, I got sick, and it took me out for a couple of weeks, and I was really confused about my path. I'm like, this isn't why I became an entrepreneur. And I knew I wanted to do things differently, but I didn't know what at the time. I knew I wanted my business to change. I didn't know what direction. And so I was just kind of holding the desires of change. And soon enough, I met my embodiment teacher, where that sort of like led me on a new journey. I was exploring other avenues within the business of like maybe developing new offerings, and maybe they would be service-based. It was like I knew in my heart there was a service-based offering I wanted to share with the world, but I didn't know what. And so when this embodiment work came into my world, it felt so resonant within me. Like my body was saying like, this is the next thing, but it wasn't even the next thing that I knew I was going to be teaching or facilitating. It was more like the knowing that this is the medicine that I need for myself right now. And so that's kind of what led me on the journey. And I studied for about 6 months before I invested then in an 18-month program. And then that was life-changing, I have to say, right? It again was like my soul needs this work for myself, and I continue to see change and transformation in very small ways. And this is my own belief that our quantum leaps aren't this like giant, massive breakthrough that happens in one moment in time, but it's like the result of very small intentional actions over and over and over again. And that's kind of just what it was for me, these very small moments that kept showing me like, oh, I'm responding differently in this relationship. Oh, I'm responding differently to myself. Oh, I'm being more gentle here. And those micro moments, like over and over and over again, built the belief that, oh, this is the new path for me. Like, this is what I want to share with the world. I want more women to feel this level of confidence moving towards the things that they want. And yeah, and so that's where enchantment came from. And that's sort of my story with embodiment work. And so the art of presence is built with 44 different practices in this modality. And it's really special, just a number of different ways to help come back to the body, calm the nervous system, have practical tools to move from this like fight or flight response to something that, taking time to move into the rest and digest, or the parasympathetic, but the body not initially just like reacting so quickly. And I continue to see that in my own life because I'm on the journey with my clients, just a few steps ahead of them, right? And the journey towards enchantment is ever continuing and ever evolving. And I think that it's really built a really solid foundation for the way that I'm showing up in the world. And that excites me to keep moving on it, right? I like to say I'm not like, oh yeah, I'm like in this enchanted place right now, and there's this end goal or end place that we get to, right? It's, as you know, Curtis, I feel like it's this continual strengthening of the self, just like this really strong rooted behavior that continues to shape the way we show up in life and respond to things differently. So yeah, that's my story in a nutshell and what enchantment means.
I love that, because you start with what you think you want, and there's always little bits and pieces that are going to be consistent, and it's that constant process, like you're saying, kind of building on that and a little bit at a time. And if someone from the outside is looking at entrepreneur to enchantment coach and embodiment facilitator, I don't understand how do those connect. But you as a person, and knowing your journey and knowing what you were inside looking to find out more about yourself,
Right.
and how you wanted to grow, it makes perfect sense. And exactly like you were saying about the should, society saying this is what success looks like, this is what you're supposed to do, this is the path that's considered the path to success, and you should do it this way. And that can be so, like you said, gloomy FM, right? You think you're not meeting these expectations of others when you have your own expectations of yourself, and they're not meshing well. So I love that. And so you mentioned it's a process. And one of the things that I also found really insightful about what you said is that you became an enchantment coach and embodiment facilitator because that's what felt right for you. And you're still on the journey. And I think the importance of what you're saying there is how you're on this journey with your clients, you're on this journey with these other people that you're serving. I think that sometimes we have this fear, this imposter syndrome, right? Like we're trying to be something that we're not. In cases like this, where it's you're trying to become a better version of yourself and you're trying to help others. Then you mentioned fear. There's that fear that, am I doing it right? Am I helping to the best of my ability? Am I the right person for this? Do I know enough to help others? And I was wondering if maybe you could perhaps expand upon that process for yourself, because it sounds like it's energizing, but at the same time, it's constantly challenging you to continue to reach higher and to do more, to go inside, to figure out what else you can leverage to help others.
Totally. Yeah. So specifically to talk to the fear, there's like a few different kinds of fear to be aware of. There's primal fear, right? Where we can very well be in danger, something in our surroundings. Our instinct is telling us, okay, we are in danger right now, right? So there's that type of fear. And then there's fear as a projected thought, which I think can keep a lot of people small, right? Knowing when our mind is going into that place of worry or fear in the future, and we're not living in the present, and we're continuously thinking and feeling in these loops of worry and anxiety of what might be because we're scared of something in the future happening, right? But that's simply the mind taking us out of the moment, and it's a projection of what might happen. And then that kind of ties into the fear of the emotional guidance system, where we have like the scale of emotions, and fear is one of the ones at the very bottom. Fear, doubt, depression. And then as we shift out into different emotions, right, we raise up the scale of the emotional guidance scale. And yeah, so fear is like right there on the bottom. And so what's important to know about that is that we're not trying to get all the way to joy, which would be at the top, right? Is we're just trying to move up slowly up the scale to move ourselves out of something that might feel really overwhelming or scary, or like we can get, maybe it's the imposter syndrome that keeps us there in the fear, like you touched on that. Oh, who the heck wants to listen to me? I'm not good enough for this, right? And so what's important there is to really connect to a better feeling thought, or do something that might shift you a little bit out of that, like taking an action that can move us one step up the scale, which is not necessarily anything close to joy or excitement. Might be anger, might be just one little step up.
That's progress, right?
Yeah, it's progress. And I think, again, that's where the mind can come in and tell us, oh, well, it's not good enough because you're not feeling this much better. But what's important here, and what's sort of been supportive on my journey, is that, like, what's just one little micro step, and remembering that we're moving, right? And it might take many weeks or many months to move up in the beginning. But what I've seen in my own experience is that then it can happen in days, and then it can happen in hours, and then it can happen in minutes. And so we're moving up the emotional guidance scale up and down all the time, because we're human and we're going to go through all the range of the emotions. And what I really help people do, and what I've learned to do with myself, is to allow myself the space to feel it and to give space to whatever's arising, because moving towards the things we want is and can be so scary, right? Like, you're putting yourself out there, you're taking risks, you're being seen. And then there's all the things after we take the action, where the mind usually goes, well, you could have done this better. And then, oh, well, you missed doing this, right? The perfectionism side kind of comes in after. And so there's all these parts that are so present. But I think the important thing is how we relate to each one of those parts as they're arising. Like, do we just want to push them away and numb and not feel the fear, or not feel the perfectionism part that also just wants us to be really great at what we're doing? But, like, how do we acknowledge and relate to those parts? So that's a lot of my teaching too, is really noticing what's arising in the body at a physical level, on an emotional level, on an energetic level. Like, what are we feeling here? And can we start to articulate and identify, like, what that feeling really is? Because sometimes we might even think it's fear, maybe it's something else. So getting better at discerning what's arising, because from there, when we can have a better understanding of what it is, there's that difference in, like, the knowing in the body of, this might just not be right for me to move forward in, versus I'm really afraid to move towards the things that I've really wanted for my whole life. And I'm just really afraid that it might not work out, or that people are going to say things about me or judge me, right? So there's like a discernment in what's actually arising. And that's what I help with my clients. And it's a journey I've been doing with myself, so that we can better understand what the body is saying. And then we have the capacity to make decisions around what is best for you in the moment.
Right. Yeah. And I love what you were saying about the different levels of fear too. And, starting with that primal fear, I mean, there's a lot of confusion around that feeling, right? Because I think, it's something that we've had for, of course, from ancient times, right? To, of course, take care of ourselves when we're in danger. But I think now that fear comes up when it's not really valid, because we could think that it's a life or death situation, when we're really talking about, well, so-and-so may not talk to us for a week if we say this, or we may lose some money if we do this. But, it's like fight or flight, life or death, so, like you were saying about just kind of working your way up the ladder. I think that's so true. And then, of course, when you're at that most basic level of fear, like you were saying as well, you lose the capacity to really think and respond, because you're in that react mode, and you can't see, right? You're blinded. You can't really see the opportunities. You don't really know what is out there and what options exist if you're stuck in that lowest, most primal level of fear. How do you help people kind of discern between that? Because it seems like a lot of people, we talk about taking a leap of faith, or going out and doing something new that may be challenging. Of course, There may be some anxiety and some fear around it, but getting them to see that you're not going to die, you're not going to, this is not life or death. Let's kind of recalibrate what kind of fear this is so we can actually work with it a little bit. I was just curious if you could share how you're helping people kind of move up that scale a little bit.
Yeah, totally. So I'll share briefly like a process that I take my clients through, and it can go in a number of different ways when I do work with a client, just based on what might arise. So just to preface for that, but the first thing is really noticing what discomfort is arising in the body, like stopping what you're doing and letting yourself take a breath and identify, like, where is this coming up in my body? So deep breathing and just noticing where that might come up. For me, a lot of my fear resides in my gut. So I usually feel a lot here, or even if I'm just anxious. So it's like, okay, first one is notice. It's the NET process. So the N is notice. So we're going to notice where it's arising in the body. And then the second one is embrace. So how can we open the body up to relaxation while we're feeling discomfort? And it's almost like you're opening up the door to a friend, right? Because usually the conditioning is like, run away, don't want you here, let's find something that's going to make me feel better, which is maybe distracting on the phone or grabbing a drink, or just, something that's maybe the habit that is not necessarily the best way to relate to what's arising in the body. So seeking something that's feel good to not feel the bad. I said this jokingly to a friend. It's like, feel bad now, feel good later. But it's really about, we are seeking short-term pleasure. So that like feel good, get you out of the bad feeling is simply not serving you in the future. And so what's kind of like the delayed gratification, right? So if we can really like be with the discomfort, there will be that feel good, not right now, but like in a little bit. So opening the doors up to befriending this part. And that's going to look a little different for everybody. And sort of when we start to explore how that feels, but it's like, you can imagine, what would it feel like to say, like, hello, friend, I'm welcoming you in, and really acknowledging that part. So different words of affirmation or words of acknowledgement, like, I see you, I love you, I honor you, thank you for being here. First of all, just acknowledging it and being with it is really all you need to do. And then if it's really like not shifting or transforming just from witnessing it, then we can sort of ask for more information. Like, is there something you want to tell me? Is there something that I need to know, right? Starting to sort of be friends with this discomfort. And, it might become clear what emotion it is, or maybe there's a memory, or maybe there's something that comes up from that. And we start to get some information about what this part is, what this feeling is, what's there, why it might be there. But we don't always need to know the why. It's really just holding space for what's there. So that's the embrace part. And then the T is transform. And what I found with myself of doing this over and over is that the transform can often happen on its own, just when we're holding space for that part. We give it space, we witness it, we embrace it as a friend, and then it naturally starts to move and shift. And usually I've found for myself, when I can identify what it is, oh, wow, this is emptiness, or oh, wow, this is fear, or whatever it is. Once I've identified what it is, it kind of just like starts moving. So then the energy starts shifting, but maybe not, right? Sometimes I've said the transform is really about asking, what do I need right now? And then I usually get information. Okay, I need to go out for a walk. Okay, I really need to journal about what's just happened right now. Okay, I need to shake my body and dance and go crazy, like whatever it is. I need to go hug a tree. I need to call a friend. I need to like release this verbally right now with myself or play my guitar or something. So what do I need right now will facilitate just that energy movement, right? Moving up the emotional guidance scale. It's going to support whatever's going on in the physical body to start to move and transform. Not putting pressure on it, like you needing to transform it, but just really allowing for that spaciousness as well to be there with it and let what needs to arise. Yeah, that's a really simple process that works really well for me and what I teach a lot of my clients and what I see great feedback on, when we can start to really connect with those parts that are ones that we don't often want to look at. And I'll give an example. It was like the first time I was asked, or actually I applied to speak at a conference that we had here at the yoga show in Toronto. For so long, so many months, I was saying, I want to be more in the speaking world. I want to step into this. And then when this big opportunity came, it was like, so much fear in my body. I can't even tell you. I was like, holy shit, am I really going to do it? I don't know. This is crazy. But it's like when we move towards the things we want, that is going to arrive. It's going to be like ding, 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 right? Like intensity, the intensity of what I was feeling in my body. And there were two ways I could respond. I could have ran away, right? I know there was a part of me that was like, I don't really need to do this. This isn't the right time, right? The logical mind tries to come in and rationalize all the reasons why it would be right to just walk away from this and that I didn't need to do it. Right. And then when I really sat with myself, it was like, okay, this is what I really have been wanting and been talking about for months. And now I have this opportunity. I can't run in the opposite direction. Like right. I can't let this opportunity go. But it was getting really real. Like, do I really want this? And it became so clear that it's because I really want it that there's so much fear, because I'm like, holy shit, am I actually going to do this? I'm going to speak in front of this many people. Oh my God, this is going to happen. What? So it's that discernment. It might even show up as like perceived danger because it's just so scary to move towards what we want, but it's not real danger. It's that projection of thought, right? Where we can get all up in the head about being something that's so scary, but that sort of feeling in the body, like also transformed into this thrill and excitement towards it once I continued to take the next step. And when I got really clear about like, this is what I want and it's okay and I can be with you, and sort of taking that control. So that's what I think when we open ourselves up to fear as our friend and we move towards it, just like you were saying, and we don't run away, that we shift like who's in the driver's seat. So our real self starts to lead, and then fear is still with us, but they're in the back seat of the car.
Right. And that concludes the first Manifest Your Greatness podcast masterclass. I sincerely hope that you enjoyed taking this transformative journey through the masterclass on mindfulness and human connection as much as I enjoyed each and every conversation that I had with these guests. In putting together this masterclass, it gave me an opportunity to take a trip down memory lane and revisit some of these discussions that I've shared with you on previous episodes, and to really reflect on the profound insights and practices that they generously shared with me and with you. So throughout our time together today, we've explored the depths of mindfulness and learned how to cultivate a deeper sense of presence and self-awareness in every precious moment. We've discovered how mindfulness can serve as a powerful tool for navigating life's challenges with resilience, grace, and compassion. But perhaps even more importantly, we delved into the intricate tapestry of human connection, unraveling the threads that bind us to one another in profound and meaningful ways. We've learned to listen deeply, to empathize wholeheartedly, and to show up authentically in our interactions with others. We also learned that through vulnerability and openness, we can forge genuine connections that transcend barriers of distance, difference, and misunderstanding. So as you carry forward the lessons and practices from this masterclass into your daily life, I encourage you to continue nurturing both your mindfulness and your connections with others. Cultivate moments of stillness and presence amidst the hustle and bustle of life. Allow yourself to savor the richness of each experience. And as you engage with those around you, remember the power of empathy, kindness, and genuine human connection to uplift, inspire, and transform. In a world that often seems fractured and divided, let us strive to become more like the beacons of mindfulness and compassion and illuminating the path toward greater understanding and unity. By embodying these principles in our own lives and interactions, we contribute to the collective awakening of humanity, one mindful breath and heartfelt connection at a time. Thank you so much for joining this episode of the Manifest Your Greatness podcast, and I look forward to spending time with you again on an episode in the near future. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Manifest Your Greatness podcast. If you liked what we've explored on this episode, then you'll love the Manifest Your Greatness coaching program. The Manifest Your Greatness coaching program is uniquely tailored to help support you on your journey to become the absolute best version of yourself. So if you are committed to taking the steps required to significantly and permanently level up in any area of your life, visit manifestyourgreatness.com/contact. Again, that's manifestyourgreatness.com/contact and schedule your free consultation call today. Talk soon.